I do find it interesting where you've got this interaction between the data engineers and data analysts. So I'm curious as to whether do you find that they can speak the same language about these data problems, or are there any cases where you find they have differing opinions or the terminology is different and they get confused? How do you find they interact with each other?
That's a great question. The skill set, if you look at the skill set of the two groups that I mentioned, they are slightly different. And that is there for a reason. But as far as the language is concerned, they are they are beginning to speak the same language because they've been collaborating so well together, right? Now, at the end of the day, what this really encourages, I would say, is smart problem solving. At the end of the day, what are we trying to achieve from this? We want the data to be reliable, we want the data to be available, to have quality and trust in the data, and ideally we want the data to be self-service, right? I really don't want the data team to become the bottleneck, right? It so what this encourages is, they actually are the data engineering team, because of the strong collaboration, now really understands how is the analyst thinking about it, right, from the business standpoint, and the analyst understands what are the challenges that the data engineers need. So this is a this because of this, to answer your question more directly, yes, they are speaking a language that is a mix of the two, right? Which is great because then both sides see things from the other's perspective, and that really allows us to build solutions that are more testable and that are more reliable and really extensible, right? And to add another point on this, right, in a standard e-commerce, right, we are an e-commerce company, so you shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel every year. You shouldn't have to create new metrics on the fly, right? The number of metrics that we the core metrics that we use should be, like, it's well understood. Now the questions is a question that comes up is, how are the stakeholders, and analysts are really representing the stakeholders, going to be looking at it? How are they slicing and dicing it? That discussion wouldn't happen organically, but because of this setup that we have, it happens organically, where we solve problems together, and so there's a architecture design, both of them review it, right, from different perspectives. And so that with that way in that way we have been able to solve, I would say, we've been able to move faster and also solve problems which are, um, I mean, we have been able to solve problems before they appear as problems, right? Because we know, we can actually see, again, going back to that analogy I was giving earlier, one of the big things in data engineering is you should be able to see the forest for the trees. You shouldn't just focus on the problem at hand, but look at the common access patterns, right? And this setup really allows us to do that. And of course, they in terms of lingo, yeah, they're speaking very similar. That is where that analyst engineer is a very interesting thing, a phenomenon that I see in the industry. It is happening.
Do you want to talk a bit more about that, like where the analyst engineer would sort of fit in, like within your team, sort of if they exist, or within a sort of broader data engineering scope within an organization?
Yep. So I have a few analysts in my team who have expressed interest in transitioning to be a analyst engineer, right? And I love that. That's a great outcome. So I definitely see that as a good transition point, right? And the way I would position it is somebody who is still an analyst. His skill set is still an analyst, but he is. I mean, as an analyst, you are strong in statistics. You are strong in understanding the business stakeholders, great communication ability, and at the same time you want to be more into the nitty-gritties of how the, let's say, dimensional model is built, or how the data sources are organized, right, or the ETL. So I see it as a transition. I don't see it as a final state, right? Similarly, on the data engineering side, if you want to be, this setup really allows you to see, you know, what is the end goal of my analysis, or what is the end goal of this data set that I've created, right? And so there can be a case that I can see where a data engineer would want to do more analysis in on top of maybe 80% data engineering and 20% analysis. And as I said, it's a slider. It's not really a there's not really a thick line between the two. So that's nobody has reached out yet, but I can see that happening too on the data engineering side. But data analysts, for sure, I've seen a couple of them have expressed interest in moving to an analyst engineer.